Now let's look at something called the geometric sequence. Let's take a look at this sequence of numbers. In the previous lesson, we knew that we should have added or subtracted a number to go from one term to the next. Here, I would add 1 from the 1 to the 2. Here, I would add 2. Here, I would add 4. In an arithmetic sequence, our common difference is just that, common, always the same. Since these are not the same, this is not an arithmetic sequence, but instead a geometric sequence. In a geometric sequence, we are looking for the same number to multiply or divide to go from one term to the next. So with that in mind, what must we multiply or divide 1 by to go to 2? We must multiply it by 2. Checking the rest of the sequence, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 2 is 16. Here's another sequence. This is also a geometric sequence. So what number does it appear we can multiply or divide by to move from one term to the next? Again, let's take a look here in the middle. What do we have to do to 9 to get to 3? We have to divide it by 3. Checking our first two terms, 81 divided by 3 gets us down to 27. And 27 divided by 3 gets us to 9, and so on. In this case, we have, again, a common number that moves from one term to the next. We call that the common ratio. And again, just like with an arithmetic sequence, there's a formula so that we can find out a term within the sequence. The formula is a sub n equals our first term times our common ratio, which we will refer to as r, to the power of n minus 1. Again, let's go ahead and try this out with our sequence here in green. We currently have 5, so let's try for our sixth term in the sequence. We know that we're going to take 16 and multiply it by 2, so our answer should be 32. Let's see if our formula works. We would like our sixth term. That equals our first term, which is 1, times our common ratio, again that's in yellow, 2, to the power of n, which is 6, minus 1. That equals 1 times 2 to the fifth power, which equals 1 times 32, which also equals 32. Exactly what we expected up here for our sixth term. Let's take a look at our next example. The sequence is -2, -6, -18, and -54. We have 4 terms. The directions ask us to find the sixth term. First thing we need to do is find our common difference. What must we multiply or divide -2 by to get -6? We know that 2 times 6 is 3, so we can multiply by 3. Negative times the positive keeps our negative. -2 times +3 is -6. So let's go ahead and check that, trying one more term. -6 times +3 is -18. So our common ratio is going to be 3. Our first term will be the first term listed at -2. Let's apply our formula. We want our sixth term, so we'll take our first term, our common ratio, and 6 minus 1. And here we have our sixth term, -486. Here's our next example. Find the nth and the 26th terms of the geometric sequence, with our fifth term being 5/4 and our 12th term equaling 160. When a problem asks you to find the nth term, it simply wants the formula that you would use to find any term within that sequence. Once we find that formula, we will be able to apply it to find the 26th term. Now, in this case, we have 2 problems. Here's our formula. You can see by the formula that our problem becomes one of we don't have the first term, we also don't have the common ratio. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that we have the first term by using our lowest term or our fifth term. Here's how that would look. We know that our fifth term is 5 over 4. Then we would have our sixth term, then our seventh, all the way through our 12th term, which we know is 160. Now, if we make this our first term, that makes 160 our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th term. So what that means is that we can say our 8th term equals our first term times our common ratio and 8 minus 1. And now with our newly shifted 8th term, we can get 160 equals our new first term, 5 over 4, times the ratio, which we still don't know, to the power of 8 minus 1. So let's keep working this out until we can figure out what our common ratio is. 160 equals 5 over 4 times r to the 7th. Let's divide by 5/4, so we can get rid of this. And remember, dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So here they cancel out. Place 160 over 1 and we can cross multiply. You will get 128 equals r to the 7th. Now remember, when we had r squared, or any letter squared, we took the square root. So now we need to take the 7th root. In your graphing calculators, find the math button, which should be in the first column, 3 down, if you are using a TI 81, 82, 83, or 84. And when you hit that, you will see this symbol. Like a square root sign, but it has an x here. What this is saying is you can put whatever you want in for x. So if I want the 7th root, here's what I'll do. Go ahead and clear your screens. Type 7. Hit the math button and hit this symbol again so that on your calculator it looks like this. You will have a place now to put a number. Type in 128 and hit enter. What you have now done is taken the 7th root of 128. You will find that your r, or our common ratio, is 2. Now that we found our r, we need to find our real first term. We need the real first term because our goal is to find the 26th term. To find our first term, we need to take one of our given terms, either our 5th term or our 12th term, and plug that into this formula. Even though our 5th term is lower, I'm going to use our 12th term because our 12th term does not include a fraction. But you can actually do the same process with our 5th term if you would like. So we're going to take our 12th term to find our first term times our common ratio, which we now know is 2, and our n minus 1. Our 12th term is 160. We still don't know our real first term. Our ratio is 2. We're dealing with 12th terms, so we're going to do 12 minus 1, which is 11. We go to 160 equals our first term times 2 to the 11th power. Simply plug that into your calculator. You will get 2048. We need to divide this 2048. And keeping the fraction in lowest terms, we get 5 divided by 64 equals our first term. When solving this, you may have found a decimal, 0.078125. If you would like to turn that back into a fraction, which will make this easier, simply type your decimal, hit the math key, and choose option 1, where it says frac, and hit enter twice. Once to put the frac there, and second to make it do it, and you will get 5 divided by 64. Fractions are more exact answers, as you don't generally want to put all of these decimals into your problem, and you don't want to round or it will change your answer. So let's go ahead and use our first term as being 5 divided by 64. let's move our first term over with our common ratio, and now we can use that to find our 26th term. Okay, again, our first direction said to find the nth term. So let's go ahead and write out our formula using our common ratio that would get us any term in our sequence. Any term will equal our first term, 5 divided by 64, times our common ratio, 2 to the power of n minus 1. This answers our first question, how to find any term in our sequence. Our second question is very specific, asking for the 26th term. So now, to get the 26th term, we'll take our first term, multiply it by 2 to the power of 26 minus 1, which is 25, 5 over 64, times 33,554,432. Take that and multiply it by 5 divided by 64. And again, you can just take this 33,554,432 and multiply it by parentheses 5 divided by 64 parentheses, since a fraction is simply a division problem. And you will get the answer, 2,621,440.